Hello, everybody. Welcome to our very first event of our public programme for Berlinale Talents 2025. We're very, very glad to have you all here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. I'm especially excited to welcome you to this event because we're in for a really interesting session. We've got two brilliant guests for you. They are some of the top minds of the world of production and marketing with backgrounds in the US in indie and art house film, and they've got a really, really exciting, in-depth and practical session lined up for us, exploring the intricacies of marketing your films in this age of media saturation. So thank you, everybody enjoy, and it's my pleasure to welcome our guests.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, hey.
Thank you for coming. My name is Jay Van Hoy. I'm a producer. This is Adam Rose-Levy. He's a marketer. We both worked together for about, what, like 2 years?
Yeah, going on 2 years now.
I don't think my bio was in the description because I've procrastinated on sending it. So
you know who he is.
I've produced 30 some odd films or been part of the production of quite a few independent films out of the US. Some titles you may recognize, some you might not. Beginners, The Witch, American Honey, The Lighthouse. We have a film coming out in a couple months with Neon distributing it in the US and Sony internationally called Hell of a Summer. That's a summer camp slasher comedy. It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to make. I found my way into marketing in 2016. The Witch was a film that I was one of the producers on. It was one of the first films to successfully use social media marketing, really to just break out and give that film a nationwide release through A24. And I was so struck by the power of what was possible on social media at the time, which was kind of, I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's almost like imagining a time before cell phones or something, but like it was a time when people just didn't know how to target audiences online necessarily. There were the US elections that were happening, so there was kind of like us and the Trump campaign that were doing it well, I guess, and we were doing a feminist witch movie, so to sort of give you a sense of my alignment and all of that. And I fell in with the folks that actually were responsible for it on the technical side, on the media buying side, on digital media, and kind of wanted the proximity to the audience. So I was struck by like how you could actually gather how the responses from the audience to your work and to the film work. It completely blew my mind. I continued to learn, and I really have worked. I think I've worked with some of the brightest. I've been really good as a producer, surrounding myself with very smart people, and I would say that I've worked with some of the brightest minds in digital marketing in the U.S., both whether they're in distribution or they're in agencies, and so when Tobias and I, who runs the Talents, we had a conversation at dinner last year. We were talking about this, and that led to him inviting me to come do this talk, and I insisted on one of these bright minds, Adam Rose-Levy, joining me, so that we could try to get into, I'd say like, just really just like see what happens in this conversation. We haven't done anything like this before, so if you, and I think it's the first time for the Talents really to focus on this, so we don't want to bore you. If we get into our own heads a little bit too much, stop us, put your hand up and I'll throw this at you, or to you rather, sorry, not at you. And we're gonna just try to, we've been preparing, we have a deck and stuff like that, and we've been preparing it for the past couple of days to help give you some orientation, but we're happy to go far afield, wherever you want in this discussion. So I know it's the first one, so hopefully it's also the most casual, open one. I'm sorry, we don't have Tilda Swinton here for you, but I understand that she had already made a visit earlier today. And Adam, I'm really pleased to work with Adam. To be here with Adam, because Adam, when we first met, I was so astounded by Adam's understanding of how the creative marketing material can be crafted for its amplification or its spread, or however you want to how would you describe it? I like a
Kind of like reverse engineering for impact, essentially, right?
yeah, and just know and the vast knowledge that he has of every technical detail in a very rapidly changing media environment online, where privacy laws had just completely rearranged the entire space when we started working together, and finding new ways and cool ways to work with it, like to get the amplification out.
Yeah, we spent like a year just mapping the entire landscape and writing very long papers on it and stuff, so it was a fun time.
We were mind melding, and I don't know, Adam, do you want to talk about your background? Adam
Sure,
comes out
yeah.
of film too, and
Yeah, so it was exciting when we met for the first time because, you were hyper interested in the world of the digital marketing space. I was hyper interested in the independent film space. So it was a really fun intersection and, 3-hour conversation or so. But yeah, I came out of film school kind of right before I think The Witch came out or around that time, and was fortunate enough to kind of cut my teeth with an emerging digital brand, if anyone's from the US, called Chubbies. And they were the first people that were, yeah, it's a very silly name.
What is Chubbies?
It's men's short shorts.
Ah, there you go.
They were really early on.
I'm definitely very familiar with it.
They could be big. I could see them being big in Berlin one day.
Anywhere.
You have your own chubby shorts here, but yeah, they're really early on to understanding how to leverage Facebook marketing and digital marketing and using it to break through. And so from there, I really took that and I always wanted to. I saw such a need of so much great cinema. I mean, and especially if you guys are attending any of the screenings this weekend, like there's such an abundance of just great film. And it deserves an audience. And so, it's really exciting for the last few years to be able to work with some really incredible studios doing it right, such as, A24, and some just independent distributors as well, and kind of craft these messages. So I feel very lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff we're going to talk about is going to feel pretty complex and big, but I think what I've noticed is that it's increasingly within reach. And as the industry is changing, I think it's actually, the technology has become more accessible directly to the filmmakers. We're seeing that trend certainly in the United States, and I think, I'm not as on the ground in Europe, so if you have any questions about how this might apply to your own experiences, please, let us know. We'll try to break it, or we're having a Q&A, but who knows? We put this deck together. It might be 6 hours. It might be, but we're not allowed to go 6 hours. We can only go about an hour or so in our talk. So, I don't know how to do this as a show of hands, but do you guys think? What do you guys think about the art house market or the specialty film market? Is it doing well or is it not doing well right now, and theatrically?
Or just shout it out, your opinion on that.
No, good, bad, because one of the things that I wanted to point out is, we want to start with some good news, which is, I believe that the art house and specialty market has never been stronger. That's been my inclination. I've looked at the releases of the past 2 years, especially in the U.S., and I've been at this for a while, and since 2006, so I've seen, financial crises, I've seen the rise of streamers, I've seen the decoupling of the early independent days in New York, just really close up as the decline of the DVD. I just said that all out of order. It should be DVD, financial crisis, rise of the streamers. But then, I've gotten quite used to this battering of things are horrible, things are changing for the worse, it's terrible. And certainly coming out of the pandemic, we've heard this, and we've heard that the theatrical market is dead, and so on and so forth. I see the films in the release over the past year or two are performing pretty much the same as the films that were in release in 2008, 2010, 2012, and I had that feeling, and when we got together, I'm going to go forward to this. I've done so much digging into this data, and Statista is a good resource. They just released this report.
It was 10 days ago.
10 days ago, that indicates the size of the market. And I think if we're talking about marketing, you kind of one of the first things you're going to want to know is your total addressable market. And if you could do $1.3 billion on essentially independent specialty film, then I think you're doing I think we should all be able to carve out a living in that space, right? I mean, I don't necessarily want to do all $1.3 billion myself, but there's plenty to go around. I don't think it's as much of a zero sum, and I think it also indicates that the market is doing quite well.
Yeah. Well, I think, the industry can be kind of dour, and I mean, if you just go back, no, I also have one of these.
We have battling clickers here, so.
I'm going to click forward.
No. Wait, I want
Hey, give me,
no.
But yeah, no, I mean, I
Which
think
one do you want? You want
yeah,
this
no, the one we're just on.
This one?
No.
This one?
Size of audience.
What?
Now I just want to go back to spite you. But
I just want some tequila shots.
I think what's cool here is like this is global, right? And so obviously COVID was tough, the industry was hit hard, but things are coming back and they're coming back strong. And I think not only obviously we're going to be focusing on the U.S. audience, but I think just globally, not only are there more amazing films than ever being made by such diverse voices, but also people are going to see them, and more people are showing up for what you call specialty film or independent film. So it's really exciting, and I think like you mentioned about the total addressable market, just to contextualize things, so, this came out of a really good Harvard Kennedy report. Again, this is all really recent. This was in November of 2024.
Have you ever read Carrie Putnam's report? If you haven't, you should go get it. You should read it. I mean, it's U.S. focused, but, it's still very worthwhile.
I think it's like the first of its kind. It was a major, polled 14,000 people. And what they found was, we're going to focus more on the theatrical side of things, but basically people want to watch these films. They do watch these films, but the availability of the space on streaming is very fractionalized. So you have to get new platforms to watch them. So the demand is there, and we need to be able to showcase by films performing well theatrically to get those on streaming as well. And then just to break it down and make it feel, because 31.5 million people is a lot of people, right? But your film could make 10 million if you just hit 2% of those people. So it really makes it much more attainable and accessible, and that's just in the US. So yeah, we were hyped to see this. This was exciting.
I'm hyped. Are y'all hyped? I'm fucking hyped. Do y'all want to keep looking at this slide? I do. The thing that comes back to me a lot when I talk to friends who are also very prevalent in the business is, or not also, that are prevalent.
It's just horror.
It's just horror. Yeah, you hear about horror being like, and it is like a profit center for a lot of these distributors, and it should be. It always has been. There's always been like a New Line, Fine Line, Miramax Dimension. It's like a hand in glove in the U.S. and we're not focused on long legs here. This isn't only about horror films. I think that a lot of this applies to the success in horror. In fact, Adam's worked on some of these successful recent campaigns of horror films, and they do very, very well. But I want to underscore that, just from last year, what is that? That's like $400 million off of some films that just aren't horror.
And basically encompassing.
I've made this spreadsheet, by the way.
It looks good.
Thanks. I like spreadsheets. I just went to IMDb, so whatever. Some of this information about the budgets could be wrong, could be right. I don't know. But it also sort of gives us a sense of which distribution companies in the U.S. are succeeding. We see Focus, Mubi. Mubi is really coming on strong with the substance this year. A24, Neon. These companies are figuring out. They really are very sophisticated and good at marketing. I think the Focus and Universal Group are really exceptional. I think, and I've worked with A24, and they're some of the best and the most amazing. I think their reputation speaks for itself, and Neon too. We just had a distribution call the other day about this film that I was just blown away by the amount of people, the attention to every single detail, and really super collaborative with the filmmakers and with it was two directors, Finn Wolfhard and Billy Brick, taking the ideas and really incorporating them in a marketing plan, listening to the audience for the film, and so anyway. So, I don't know. I've seen it from the producer side. I've seen it from the director side. I'm sorry, not the director side, the marketing agency side. One thing I also want to say, I'm sure marketing gets a bad rap. It really does. But you know how it's so hard to run a digital agency. I mean, doing a digital marketing agency is just one of the hardest things I've ever seen in my life. It's just incredibly difficult, really hard work. Marketing is very, very tough work. It's also super innovative and creative, I dare say. It can be, and it can be a lot of fun. And I think it is a way for us to bring about, as you'll see, we'll come back to these notions of participation, bringing the audience into closer participation with your marketing campaign as we continue to go forward here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing just to mention, jumping back, is like, again...
No, it's going forward.
All right, well, I'll keep it in your head.
No, jump back.
We're going to spend the whole time on just this slide. Don't worry. No, but again, like, I don't know if you guys, in your countries or wherever you're from, right, in Europe, America, APAC, LATAM, but, there's kind of these notions, at least within the, Hollywood and the film industry, like, people don't go see comedies. People don't go see, romantic dramas or, films with, people competing to be the next pope. So we just, everything on this list, we wanted to show, like, it's not just one studio. There's a bunch of studios doing it. It's not just a certain type of film. It really transcends, all genre. And I think what it really comes down to is two things. One, there's a distinct audience that it appeals to. And then two, they have good marketing campaigns. So that's what we kind of wanted to leave you with here.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
And then this was, again, from that same study, and just exactly what we're saying.
I think the specialty marketplace gets lopped in with the overall health of the industry. The studio business in the U.S. has been, in various states of turbulence since streamers came on board, like since the decline of the DVD, really. And the specialty marketplace just operates according to its own rhythms, its own dynamics. It has its own, like the audience behavior is its own thing. It sits outside of the studio business pretty, I think it's self-evident in these numbers. And I don't know, I like this. Should we speak?
Just thought this was a cool image. Yeah, but I mean, I think ultimately takeaway here is like.
I love this deck, man.
Hey.
Good deck.
Thank you. Everyone look at this cool image we pulled from that study. Blue light. Unusual, unexpected stories. That's what they all have in common. And people find them online. Those are the takeaways there.
Yeah.
And because we're talking about the marketing. So there's kind of four things that we're going to talk through today, again, time permitting. First is how you position your film so you can stand out in that cluttered marketplace and mind space. How you identify your audience and then craft a message for that audience. What is mental availability? And how do you achieve it? And then how do you make lasting connection, which I know is one of the subjects, so we definitely want to touch on that. And yeah, we love Dolly Parton, and she has a great quote that tees us up for positioning, where she says, hey, you should find out who you are and then do that on purpose.
Yeah, or with purpose, really.
On or with purpose, Be intentional. Like, you think you know your film, you do know your film. You think you know yourself, you do know yourself. How do you position yourself strategically and intentionally, just like Dolly. Do you want to
talk about the positioning statement? The positioning statement is going to be a little bit different than your pitch. Like, I know that I'm horrible at pitching, but the pitch is really a lot more story focused, whereas your positioning statement that we're going to get into here is kind of the North Star for the marketing team, for everybody to know how the campaign's going to shape up, how you're going to differentiate the film within the market, and make it memorable. And what are the inherent qualities, the salient qualities of the film that are going to captivate audiences, and so that they will actually take the risk of coming to see your movie in a movie theater.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much just noise both online and in the world that's fighting for our minds. And so, that's where we're kind of breaking this down by how do you stand out and declutter? No one wants to see something where you're like, hey, this is the same as everything else you could be watching right now, right? So how do you establish it as being distinct? People are, humans are emotional creatures, so highlighting how it makes you feel. And then how do we keep it top of mind, right? So the positioning, you don't have to we'll talk about how you can evolve. But you really want to touch on these things, and this can kind of be the blueprint of your messaging campaign, and help you go on your marketing journey. So, wanted to start with a specific example, and then we can kind of go back to our Mad Libs template. But
by the way, these isn't, we didn't work on the substance.
No.
We didn't work on these movies. This is just like pulling movies and playing around with them as if we might have or could have or just, you know.
Yeah,
they're common references.
I think the important thing here is, you know, we were talking to some filmmakers yesterday, and I think there's this classic, and it's always been the case, is of a push-pull, right? Of like, oh, my film doesn't have any comps, it's totally unique in the space. And we want to celebrate, you know, the, you know, unique and individuality and art of these films, but also establish quick, fast-thinking mental connection. So, you know, striking that balance. And I think with a lot of these, you know, genre-defying films, you'll see that, you know, at least this is our stab at saying, here's how you could do that, right? So, body horror film for genre fans, right? But these genre fans crave bold, thought-provoking cinema. We're differentiating it from mainstream horror because it's shocking and unlike anything you've seen before, but it's also a sharp feminist critique of beauty standards in Hollywood. And you're going to come away with it feeling haunted and reflective.
Does that sound about accurate for the substance for you?
Or you might come away with it feeling a little sick too. Heard some people were puking. Yeah, so I mean, feel free to take and run with this. There's many ways to create your positioning. This is just something we thought was cool, and again, just stemming from, again, how do you establish it within a space, differentiate it from the space, speak to an audience, differentiate it from other films they may be familiar with, and then talk about how they're going to feel and the emotional impact.
Any questions about that? No? Okay, cool. Yeah? Oh, I get to throw it to you. Again.
So this is for the positioning. This would be before the pitch, or is that what you were saying?
This is really when your film is finished. You want to bring it out to market. You're about to start your campaign. We're going to go through like a campaign structure so you understand a little bit more how it falls on a calendar. And it's going to guide the trailer, the how you're thinking about your audiences, and it becomes a frame of reference for everyone to have as, you know, how is it being described to press? How are people thinking about it? Does that make sense? Like, how are you initially communicating?
Yeah, so it's used for several things. This is not just to sell the actual thing. This is also for post, or?
No. This is what, that's a good distinction. Like, we're talking about marketing a film to people that are going to movie theaters. And so it isn't quite the same. I mean, you could use it, you could have this in your back pocket if you're talking to a distributor, of course. And some of this information we hope that you can take on will help you in your conversation with distributors and working with them. If your distributor is you know, marketing your film, they're going to be starting with some form of positioning statement, like the one that we're talking about. It could be. This is not some official formula. We just like came up with an illustrative way for you to think about a positioning statement. You know.
But I do think, to your point, like you're saying, using this framework at any stage in, you know, development of your film. You know, again, as Jay said, it's not an end-all, be-all, but I think it just helps make it specific and think about it in the right way.
Right, because I was just trying to figure out how it distinguishes from the actual pitch part, like this.
Yeah.
If you were to be like very, you know.
You could have it as a pitch. I don't know. I haven't tried it as a pitch, but the marketing team could be 3 people strong. It could be 30 people strong, and so it kind of aligns. It gives you a sort of a North Star mission for that. That's how we're talking about it here.
Yeah. You're talking about a certain market strategy that everything derives from, right?
That's right.
That's a reference.
That's a better way to say it. You should come.
Right.
Please come
Thank you.
join us. We'll pull you up a chair.
Looks like we have another question in the back.
Thank you for the question.
Do you want this back?
Hi.
This is very interesting, and maybe this question, how, from your budget, like if you don't have a distributor yet, like from your budget, should you allot some of that, and like sort of how much percentage of that, or do you wait to have a distributor and then they basically put that money to this marketing and all of that?
Traditionally, it's your distributor who's putting the money in for marketing, but increasingly, I think we're seeing a trend where, especially in the U.S., like there are more and more folks discovering that that they can bring an agency in and do their own marketing and raise money for the marketing money, the prints and advertising, as we call it, P&A, and book the theaters themselves. In fact, Adam's been working on a couple of recent releases in that vein.
Yeah,
right?
like 2 in the last year.
Yeah, so even at a large scale of like 2,000, 3,000 screens in the U.S., which is a lot for the U.S. I mean, it's nationwide releases. They are taking advantage of digital marketing as a way to just go direct to theaters. And there's more services, and even the exhibitors are starting to organize more services for that. So it could be either is the answer. Traditionally, it's your distributor who's doing this type of work, and they're probably going to they may be presenting you with a positioning statement even. Like, this is how we're thinking about your movie, and this is how we think we're going to market it. How's that sound to you? And you might say, actually, no, it's not that at all. And I'm thinking about it a little bit different. Like, it's a conversation starter too, to make sure everybody's on the same page and that they're thinking about bringing it to market in the same way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's providing like a checklist to ensure that you have these elements covered, right? But I think within the context of filmmakers here at EFM, like, you can use these techniques, and as Jay said, like, I think our whole takeaway we want to leave you with is this can be very DIY. You don't need a team of 30 strong people, and like, you could buy ads and events around stuff like this, where you're specifically using these tactics to message to potential distributors.
Which we'll get to.
Yeah.
We're gonna break this down even further.
Cool. And then we just have a few other examples of, again, how you can kind of take this technique or a semblance of it for many different films.
I think we have another question back here.
Oh, go for it, yeah.
Sorry, hi, thank you very much for this. My question has to do with documentaries. Especially in documentaries, you have all this procedure until you produce the film finally, and you pitch, you present, you have all this, let's say, past life. Until the film appears, you have a lot of positioning, a lot of wrong or whatever pictures going out there, a lot of trailers, statements, etc., etc. How do you vanish? Because I work with documentaries, and I have always the problem, the wrong pictures are around, the director has his own opinion on what the positioning should be, then the producer comes in and the distributor on top of it. So how do you vanish all this previous life of the film to create what you propose? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's 2 thoughts there, but I'll just go with the main one, which is like, you can let the data tell you. So that's a big thing that we use whenever, we think we have a strong idea, and, maybe, a filmmaker or, someone on the marketing team, a producer, whoever is like, I don't know, this seems different than how I would see it. Basically, and what we'll talk about is with digital marketing strategies on platforms like, TikTok, YouTube, and Meta, you can spend a little bit of money, run differing versions. You could literally run 3 different positioning-driven creatives and see which one is gaining traction. And then it becomes pretty straightforward. Cool, we're seeing a clear winner here, and that can kind of guide us on our journey. Do you feel like that answers your question or what you're looking for?
Well, vanishing the previous online life of anything is very difficult. I don't know how.
We're exploring that right now.
Yeah, I think with me, I'm trying to vanish from there. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's hard to suppress what's been out there already, and you kind of have to lean in. You have to lean into it, and I think, and also, hopefully, it's a collaborative relationship. I mean, movies do change, especially documentaries. They're going to grow and change. They get the movie that even in fiction narrative, the movie that we think we're setting out to make is going to have become its own expression through the performance of the actor and then through the edit. And as it goes into the audience, I think the audience also can appropriate the movie in their own ways too, and they can make their own meaning out of it. And I think you start to get that as it goes into the world. And like you're saying, the feedback mechanisms through your marketing campaign digital wants you to know what's happening with who's engaging with what, so they can make more money off of you, and that you can use that to your advantage. Yeah.
Totally, yeah, and we'll talk about that as well on you can put your best foot forward in terms of a clear positioning and your brand messaging, and then once it goes out into the wild world of the internet, you kind of are passing the baton to the community and to the audience and can shape it in some really cool and interesting ways you'd never imagine.
Yeah, but this is we're at the starting place.
Yeah,
we're at the positioning statement. Yeah.
Great. And then do you want to just hit the Conclave one so we can roll into?
Conclave is a tense thriller for fans of political dramas. Unlike other thrillers, it provides a rich, complex depth with its thought-provoking exploration of power, faith, and Vatican secrets. That's just a stab at another positioning statement for a movie that maybe you've seen. But it can just to show that this can be done almost with any type of movie.
But yeah, I think it's fun because
you can also, it's like Mad Libs. You can do whatever you want with it.
Fill in the blanks, Feel free to put your own film on here or don't,
Conclave is a terrible movie that disappointed me greatly. No, I'm kidding. That is not a positioning. That's not how you can say it.
But yeah, no, what I was gonna say, it's funny because this hopefully like demystifies a little bit, because whenever these movies come out, people are like, oh my God, how are people seeing this stuffy adult Vatican movie? What the heck? And I was like, yeah, it's a thriller, and it gives you some rich political dramas for people that get down on that stuff.
Very different from the description of the substance, obviously.
And again, we didn't work on any of those films, but we want to use real examples. And
the next part is segmenting the audience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have your blueprint for your campaign and your communications, which is your positioning. And now, you're going to have a core audience that positioning appeals to. You're starting to kind of, flesh out who your audience is within your positioning. So in this one, hey, fans of political dramas, right? So that's our main audience. We're going to say it's, an older audience is who really showed up for this film. So 40 to 65 plus year old fans of cerebral political intrigue dramas. But then you also have an adjacent audience that you can reach and speak to. People who love thrillers and just really high, intense pacing, gripping, unique narratives are going to like that. And then, even outside of that, you may have another adjacent audience. And again, this still fits all within those 37 million people we talked about. And maybe it's even more now that we're exploring people that may not self-identify as fans of specialty cinema, but are appealed to as, oh, I'm a history buff. I'm really fascinated by the arcane Vatican traditions, right? So you can kind of see how you start to craft and build out and start to speak to specific people.
You got to start somewhere when you're segmenting your audience. You have a sense of it. You have an intuitive sense of who the film is for, and you're breaking it down into categories according to lifestyle, age. Are they? What else? I guess like behaviors, like what kind of films that
media consumption patterns, which we'll talk about as well. Yeah. And so these are just, again, some based on how we're talking about our different audiences being political dramas. So speaking to political drama, big surprise there. And then always like never before seen, see it in theaters. It needs to be seen on a big screen, which so often these films are. For our political, our thriller audience, focusing on drama and gripping intrigue, the secrets, the power, the betrayal. And then, for our more audience geared around history, around, curiosity of spirituality, the power of faith leaves you questioning everything. So it just shows that these can then have these kind of through threads that lead to the creative and the positioning and the marketing.
Statement evolving according to the audience groups that you could just pick 3, it doesn't have to be 10. Just 3 audience groups is fine. It gives you some alternates and ways to explore how you're going to reach those audiences. And then you look at what type of media they frequent.
Yeah, so this is just an example, because then this kind of moves us in. So we have, through this, like, if we were all marketing Conclave, here's how we do it, right? So we've established our audiences. They didn't need our help. They did super well, and I think they were doing some semblance of this maybe. But
we have no idea, to be honest.
Who fucking knows? But, so we just look at, okay, great. If we have our older audience, maybe they're reading stuff like BBC and watching the news. And
it's an English language film.
Yeah. And, I think a funny thing we find is that basically we think everyone is on social media. We see everyone is on social media. And so it kind of transcends age and psychographics, at least some form of social media. And so you can just kind of see how we start to break down how these people...
Are older people on Instagram?
Well, you're buying, yes, yeah.
They are.
And what's cool is...
Like me, older people.
Are you
Not
on Instagram, Jay?
No, I'm technically part of it. No, I'm not. I mean, not really. I'm not on social media.
But yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is that basically the way that all these major platforms work is they own all these other little platforms within them. So if you're using Facebook to buy ads, you're also buying ads for, I don't know if WhatsApp has ad service yet, but certainly Instagram and all their other little in-game ads. So you're buying it programmatically, and that happens with Google, with Amazon, across the board.
Yeah. Any questions about this stuff so far? Yeah. There's the...
Pass the inflatable mic.
Hi. Hello. I do have a couple of questions, but on this slide in particular, let's say you're operating on a low budget, right? Mm-hmm. You have a production company per se, and you've decided you're gonna do the marketing in-house. On apps like Reddit, which is very much user-based in the sense that somebody writes a comment, or in Letterboxd as well, where there are reviews, would you decide to maybe have like people working incognito, like doing posts, etc., or would you go directly to Letterboxd or Reddit? And if you, again, as I said, had a very small budget, which ones would you choose? Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Working incognito, question number one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, we can neither confirm nor deny, but I think, yeah. Okay. I definitely think it happens, and you really want to work.
Another way to look at that is building your community on Reddit, and engaging Reddit through building awareness and finding ways for your audience to have a gathering place there.
Those are all things you can do for free, just in your pocket, right? In terms of just
those
effort. Communications and stuff. It's just a time aspect, but I think I think what a lot of fixed budget marketing companies run into in terms of marketing their films is just trying to do too much. So I think realistically, for a more limited campaign rollout, it's just picking one lane and then going from there. So we typically.
Which one would you pick? Would you pick the Facebook, or I guess it depends on the film. But let's say Conclave was like a small film or appealing to that audience. You wouldn't pick TikTok, right?
I wouldn't. I mean, it depends on what I think. TikTok, each platform speaks its own language and has its own nuances and audiences.
But on
right?
Talk to Me.
And so we saw success. I mean, I think you can run kind of. I'll go back and say I would do both. I think they're kind of, but I think what's interesting too is you see there's interplay. So for example, you could take a Letterboxd review of your film and turn that into a static ad and run that on Instagram. Or you can take a TikTok post and run that on Facebook. And so there's ways to kind of integrate, because again, you're going to find the specific content is going to find the right audience. So by both organically communicating and messaging outside of like running any paid ads, I think picking one lane that makes sense for you and going for it would be the right approach.
And social media just loves social stuff, So if you're having a screening and people are really enjoying the film, that kind of stuff, you have everything you need in your pocket probably with a smartphone to be able to capture that. It doesn't have to be super high end. You can cut that together with your title treatment and what you have as a trailer, and have an actual really banging ad from that can run on Facebook, and you can do different variations of it, test it on Facebook. And how much would you say it costs to test a creative asset on Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it just for a couple $100 to get some good feedback there. So I think again, the takeaway.
You need like 50 events, right?
Yeah, so the way that, to get technical and go under the hood, what you run into, and again, the challenge that people do by trying to do too many things, right? And then you end up, not being able to really make an impact because you're spreading yourself so thin. And then also running way too many ads is just, for every ad you're running, or every campaign you're running, let's say you want people to look up showtimes or buy tickets, you need 50 of those events to happen. So you would need 50 purchases to happen to pass what they call the learning phase. So basically that this is working or not, that the algorithms and these, bots have been trained to understand that this is how it works, right? So, I think that's the biggest problem I think people run into is they just try to do too much and overcomplicate. But if you're able, I think, depending, like obviously there's, and we'll touch on it a little bit, there's so many different, what we really like about Meta is there's so many different optimization events that you can have people do. So anywhere from just viewing a trailer, to commenting on a trailer, to looking up showtimes, to buying a ticket, to starting to buy a ticket, right? And there's gonna be a range in how expensive those things are. If I ask you to watch something, it's going to be a lot cheaper to get you to do that, to say, hey, pull out your credit card and buy a ticket to my movie. So, depending on that, the cost can range. If you're just looking to get 50 views, it could be pennies. If it's, 50 ticket purchases, it could be more expensive. But, I think definitely it's all very attainable. And, we were just kind of talking about, theoretically, you could spend, a digital budget of $50,000 and gross $1 million. And there are film examples of people just, a 3-person team or a 2-person team, someone that can buy ads, someone that can cut ads and, make some social content and some user-generated content, and it's kind of all you need.
Thank you.
And there's all sorts of YouTube videos out there to teach you how to buy ads. I mean, there's so many. They're like people, you'll figure out which ones that know what they're doing pretty within an afternoon of watching them. I have. I learned a lot from YouTube.
Same.
I learned how to fix my sink and my dishwasher during the pandemic.
And we have one more question here, please.
Hi. Thank you. So I'm just going back to the previous one, but I'm just wondering in terms of conversion rates, because what I found is actually every time we do digital marketing, the conversion to ticket sale is just so small, to be really honest.
Yep.
I'm talking about obviously indie and documentaries and so forth. And so, we've been looking into obviously gathering, emails, newsletter, networks of networks, all of these things. And I mean, I love this presentation because it makes it sound like it's easy to actually distribute your film, or it made me hopeful. But it feels to me that every single email is a fight, and it's quite intensive. And actually this idea that, nowadays, directors and filmmakers have to also distribute their film is it's quite epic.
It's a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah, it's huge, right? And so, yeah, I don't know what's your experience, because I see Instagrams, all over, but I mean, for me, it never really worked and resulted into ticket sales, even when we put some dollars behind it. So I don't know if there is anything else that you have came across that is maybe more one-to-one, or, I'm just mentioning newsletter, but there is also this whole conversation about making an event, so now we have to tour with the film, so the filmmaker is going everywhere with the film, so it's you're becoming like a rock band, in your van all around, I mean, I don't know what's
We're
any other experience you have that is maybe a bit more underground that you have came across that actually sell tickets
we're
as well.
doing that on the film that's being released in the U.S., literally going around, the filmmakers are going around in a bus for 1,500 screen release with neon. I think it's all part of it. I think what you're touching on is the incredible importance of the communities. We're all part of a community by being here in Berlin. And I mean, email marketing it should be effective, but what do you think about the conversion rates and how do you, I mean, we're going to talk about this, we're about to go into the shape, I mean, it's a good segue sort of to the next slide in a way, because we're going to talk about the shape of a campaign and how that would work. And it's a lot of what you just touched on.
But these techniques there have worked for you in your films.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to give you the playbook here of how films, are able to break through and reach mainstream audiences, right? Or within at least our specialty film window. I think, ultimately, I think email can be really effective, but I think it's understanding both. It's hard to create benchmarks, meaning determining what a good conversion rate is and what not, kind of comes down to your own projects and seeing what works for you. So if you have a 1% click-through rate, and then you're able to create some new assets and those have a 3% click-through rate, it's that kind of communication of, okay, this style we're seeing more energy directed towards these assets that we're running. But I think we just want to provide the tools that have worked for us, and the intent is not to say, hey, do all of this, because it's a lot. But I think the whole process of creating a film is a tremendous amount of work and labor of love, and I think this is a logical extension of that. But hopefully they give you little, hacks or ways to accelerate your process.
And we have one more question on this topic, and then we can move on.
Thank you. There's a lot of young filmmakers who are aiming to, create as much impact with as little money as possible. So if all of you are not familiar with the Blair Witch Project's pretty incredible work they did like 20 years back, it's a really nice case study. Like at that time, when they used to spend information about this clip that was found, and people were really terrified of it and so on, and it was at that time when people trusted each other in the internet. But if you can find that sort of community, for instance in Reddit, and like create conversation there around your topic or so on, that's definitely one sort of a case study you should check into if you're not familiar with that yet. I'm not talking to you guys, but more of the audience.
Well, we actually applied a lot what they did, the Blair Witch Project, on the marketing of the witch, so it's particularly relevant. They had a bigger marketing budget, ultimately. They ran, one way that they created conversation was by running ads on Fox News in the US, which is a conservative news network, to get like a reaction from people so that they could then amplify that reaction among the audience, and then creating somewhat of a rivalry between these camps. So we did some stunts like that. There is a way, you wanted to first grab attention. Anyway, let's go into the next slide. But yes, you're right. Thank you for raising that.
So it's a great case study, yeah. And the good news is a lot of these questions we're going to be talking about through these slides. Hopefully, yeah.
So this is kind of, what we tried to do here was break your, this is the US, but I think it could apply anywhere. It's break your campaign down into 3 major phases. Without reading this entirely, I think there's, you're wanting to create awareness in the first part of it, then you're building word of mouth and demand and intent in the second, and then and then the third part of your campaign, you're really spending money on, if you have the money to buy ads.
Yeah, I think just to add there, what's cool that we touched on in one of those questions as well, of those conversion events, right, and how you can buy against different behaviors, you can see how that changes based on, the stage of the campaign. I think this is really amazing information to share, because this is kind of how, these campaigns are structured. So initially you have a trailer launch, and your goal is to get as many views and engagement as possible to show, hey, this is a cultural event, this is something to pay attention to. It kind of gives you social proof of that. And then with this as well,
your publicity team is working.
Yeah, and so then you're getting picked up by different press. You can court some controversy, like the Blair Witch Project did, right? There's little, streamlines and shortcuts there. But a lot of this too, like we talked about, so your goal there is you can also be really receptive and open to how people are responding, both in terms of early screenings and trailer response. So you can kind of go out, obviously, with your positioning to inform your trailer, and then say, great, is this working? Do we need to kind of, adjust and pivot? And there are stories of pretty major campaigns pivoting, late in their marketing, and ultimately, for the benefit of the film.
This is really where you're learning about your audience, I think, is when you start to do this. In the first phase, you're doing feedback screenings. You're in those feedback screenings. They're test screenings, but you're getting focus group information and finding out, was my positioning statement correct for these audiences? Is there a new audience cohort emerging that I didn't understand? And you're kind of coming back and you're revising your approach. And then you want to do some testing, and as you're building up all of your creative assets, like your posters, key art, different videos, behind the scenes stuff. This is the stuff that you're going to be running on your pages, or releasing into other. You're doing events, and you're videoing those events, and you're bringing those events online, some form or fashion. You're just wanting to get people to pay attention. Not everything's going to work. Some of it's going to pop, some of it isn't. And you're getting a sense of, you're testing those creative assets to see how they're performing online. That's going to give you additional information about when you're going to be spending your money in your last month to get people to the movie theaters. And you might be doing it, and you're going to be doing some form of tour along the way with your film, no matter what. You're going to be going to film festivals. You could be playing in film societies. I mean, what's emerged in the U.S. is these regional film societies all over the country, from Austin to, from major cities anyway, Los Angeles, the Cinematheque. And these are curated events where you're getting concentrations of people that love movies like the films that we're making, that you're making. And if you have the budget, then your phase 3 is going to be where you're spending it. You're spending most of it, like all the way up, and most of that money is being spent on the last week of your campaign.
Yeah,
you're
so
really blasting it
so
out.
In execution, what we've done is, and again, it is a lot of work, and it's like when a film's coming down the pike, that's going to be, even this past year or so, it's the timelines have even been shortened to like 2 months or less. So this is all truncated into this like narrow window of blitz. And so exactly to your point, man, it's like you really want to be very conscious and very intentional with what you're putting out. Put a lot of it out. Some of it is not going to work, and that's fine. And some of it will. And you lean into and understand what's working and amplify it. So, on Maxine last year, going into the final like 48 hours before the film, we were still tweaking ads and putting and piecing messaging together like we talked about to have a breakthrough impact.
So now let's talk about the medium. I think, well, we can always go past it. Without going into Marshall McLuhan, the point here is that this is a participatory medium. We often think about social media as from an attention standpoint, but just keep in mind that attention is one form of participation. We're sharing content, we're reading. This is what these platforms want us to be doing on their platforms, and they want to keep us there as long as they possibly can so that they can make more money off of us with ads. There are incentive systems that are often changing. In fact, Facebook goes through changes like every year or two. There could be new legislation that comes on and changes how you're measuring, the data that what they're allowed to release in terms of data and attribution data of the customer data that they're able to provide you, or maybe the richest man in the world buys a platform, and so this environment is shifting and changing, and what works on Facebook today probably isn't going to be the same techniques or strategies that work in 6 months.
But I think underlying there are fundamentals that prevail, right? And so it's like, obviously it's extremely important to know, and what we saw was, as the result of a lot of privacy laws, like there was a catastrophic shift in the way that media was being bought and some of the targeting methodologies, but it's like fundamentally, emotionally impactful, creative, and doing stunts that get a rise out of people and speaking the language of the platforms are always going to connect, right?
I think a great trailer is like 10x's the success of your campaign, whereas when you're talking about like your media buying strategies, you're looking at like single percentile differences at most. I mean, it's like it's optimization of media spend versus the creative, which can really be, depending on the film, it could be the most striking thing and really spread like wildfire.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's like if you are trying to punch above your weight and create something exceptional that really gets noticed, like you have to be bold and you have to do things and say things that people haven't heard before that is very pattern disruptive. You have to earn that attention because it's, you're playing in a pretty giant space of noise. And you need to have what we call, really strong mental availability. I think a lot of times you just hear awareness. We need to create awareness, but like what do we really need? We need people to be thinking about our film and occupying space in their minds so that when our film is in theaters or is on streaming, wherever it may be, that people can and seek it out. And then with that, and also back to our study that we referenced earlier, you need physical availability. So they need to actually be able to seek it out and source it, and be able to access it easily and seamlessly. And so we leverage our media campaigns and our buying to try, and with good creative and good messaging, to meet people where they are on those platforms and speak their language. And so I just want to show, again, we talk about, I think it's like balancing this out with some of this fundamentally strong, integrated messaging and iconography, but then tailoring it to each platform while they're still through threads, right? So I think, we have this really amazing, very distinct title and treatment of that title, but you can see that there's so many different executions within that, right? Like, and so many different opportunities and ways to occupy that mind space and break through that mind space, because a letterbox review like I referenced before, and posting that might resonate with someone more than a trailer review on TikTok or a press clipping that creates kind of an authority. And then also just kind of guiding people and telling them to take action, like, oh, there's a great date night movie, get tickets now, or things of that nature.
Yeah, you kind of have to just not be embarrassed by what you're doing. And I think, I'm like just telling people, like, go to see the movie. But you don't need billboards for it to succeed. It's just an example there. I mean, out of home could take the form of street art. It could be a mural that you're painting. That mural can be caught on video and it can live online. You're going to come up with ways to promote your film that we can't imagine because they're unique to your film and it's bespoke to your film. This worked for Maxine, certainly, and at least within the first day of its release. But every film's different.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's
this combination of efforts is what's like harnessing like almost a groundswell.
Yeah, and it's based on your own, tailor it to your own journey, right? If it's just a screening that's happening hyper-localized in your city or prefecture or anywhere, tailoring this, like you said, just to ultimately the goal is how do you, speak in a place that people are going to see it, be consistent, and be bold with that. And so, you can do it in a lot of guerrilla and novel ways. And we want you to kind of take and run with this. So a quick aside or example, like you were saying, is I have a friend who ran a clothing brand when we were in college, and since day one that I knew him, he would just print all these stickers and put them around LA. Everywhere he'd go, he'd put a sticker on, a lamppost, a crosswalk, a sign, on campus, off campus. And flash forward, there was a pretty major film, like Hollywood film with Bryan Cranston in it, and James Franco. And his clothing brand sticker, there was a scene where it was like a hacker, and the hacker's computer was decorated in stickers, and somehow that sticker was in this film. And he has no idea how it got there, but you'll never know where your campaigns can end up and who will see them. So, fight the good fight and try to occupy some mind space. And so, yeah, again, like, to achieve mental availability, what does it mean? Again, you need to be distinct, so it's got to be unique and specific, recognizable and consistent in that way. I think ultimately, again, you don't want to, it's always a challenge, but you don't want to misrepresent your film, so I think it's kind of using that right positioning, tailoring the positioning to find that right balance. But you can really break through just by being, having that repetition, that visibility, and being intriguing and intentional.
Social proof, like people that are having, we look for cues from other people to know if it's something that we should take the risk of doing, whether that's crossing the street or going to see a movie. Movies actually carry even though they're not that expensive, they create a great deal of social risk. Because let's imagine yourself going on a first date. Are you going to ask this person to a movie that you're uncertain of whether or not it's a good film or not? Probably not going to take that risk. And I think that illustrates the type of this, what not only are you inviting people out and giving them a reason to come out of their homes to come watch your film in the movie theater, but also that it's going to deliver on its promise. And one way to do that is, there's influencers, there's other people that are endorsing your work, right? And there's reviews from like authoritative figures and key opinion leaders, or folks like whether it's the review that you talked about on Letterboxd, that's somebody who's seen it, that might not be a big reviewer, but it's showing that people are enjoying this film, versus like a critic's pick from the New York Times in the U.S. or something in the Guardian, or you're part of the official competition at Cannes. In any case, or Berlin. And in any case, you're taking these, and these are indications that yes, this is a film that's worth seeing. And
and I think the exciting thing too on that note is like we've done some different testing between which has more influence, like a review from The Guardian versus a review from Jay or Adam, right, or anyone in this crowd, and especially Jay, truly, that's what moves the needle. And the fact is they both work, but I think the good news is that just fan, letterbox reviews are highly effective. So, anyone can achieve that. I had a film go into a short film go into a random festival I'd never went to, and it got 2 letterbox reviews. So I was like, sweet, that's cool. So it's like, all your movies will get letterbox reviews. You can turn those into ads and attract more people that log films on Letterboxd to go watch them.
Yep. And this, we probably don't have it, this is probably like its own presentation, but like there is a difference in, I'll gloss over this quickly, is between strong ties networks and weak ties networks. Weak ties networks is an easy way to think about it. It's like virality and it's spread of your message. Strong ties are community, and they're more enduring ties for people. It takes it's a lot slower process with strong ties, but those ties and community are going to be more enduring, and they're going to last for longer. So you might find yourself like when you guys did the long game, like you'd establish a lot of like strong ties into the film's release that then arrived when it was on Netflix, and then it displaced
Beverly Hills Cop, yeah. So that was an example of a film that was just it was a Latino film studio in the U.S. that just decided to self-release this movie, and we created a ton of groundswell around it with all these community screenings, events. People were talking about it, and the weekend it came out, they re-released Shrek 2 in theaters, and so our entire audience that was going to go see this movie, it ended up making a few $1 million. It still had a decent domestic theatrical run. But sometimes I think, and we'll talk about it a little bit, like the impact and legacy of your film can be very long tail. So whereas theatrical was still strong for a self-distributed film, where we really saw it shine was when it went to Netflix. And that is when people were able to say, oh, cool, it had the physical availability that was preventing them from seeing it in the theaters, so they ended up streaming it, and it dethroned a huge Hollywood franchise with some kind of original community-driven filmmaking and storytelling. So it was really exciting to see.
If you're interested in reading about this and you like to read in English, I would recommend Damon Santola's work, Change, How to Make Big Things Happen. It's a book that came out in 2021, and he's been a pioneer in understanding strong ties networks, and I think it's very valuable. Change, How to Make Big Things Happen. Centola is his last name, Damon. Yeah. I just like this slide. This is about just to know, like when your film's campaign is going out in this media, you're going to be alongside of all sorts of other people and entities and organizations that are pumping money into the same space. And you're interacting with spies, with social entrepreneurs, with political campaigns, with public communications campaigns that are, have genuine benefit for society. Not that all spies and political campaigns and social entrepreneurs don't, but most of them don't. And then like KOLs and influencers and other advertising campaigns that are out there. They're all having an impact on the environment. So if it's a shopping holiday coming up, your ad spend is going to cost you more to release your film online, because the ad prices just go up because there's such high demand. If you're in the middle of a heated political campaign, which we kind of are right now in Germany, right? And so like people's attention are going to be pulled. It's inevitably going to create a personal context for the folks as they're going online and what they're expecting to see, and it's important to be aware of that. I've had some experience with disinformation that's actually attacking big Hollywood films and disinformation campaigns that were of who knows what origin, but corresponded with the rise of QAnon in the United States. Just to give you a sense of the left-hand side of the spectrum here, and when another more overt example is when Parasite won Best Picture. Trump commented on that because he wasn't happy about the film being not made in America and winning Best Picture at the Oscars. And so there is interaction between them. And depending on where your film sits, your film may very well have an important social message that needs to get out there, and it is interacting with the way that people are making meaning. And by the way, this is participatory. This is all participatory. It's the media is asking for you to take action, even if it's just your behavior on your iPhone or your computer. You are taking action by doing that. And if you're sharing a message or anything like that, going back to the medium of the message thing, and we are all the medium. And I encourage us all to broadcast in full color when we're sharing information with each other in social media. And instead of black and white moral reality, but we can go to the next one.
Yeah, and I think the other thing here too, and this slide tees it up well, is just that with the medium being the media, being the message, it creates communities, and communities are in groups and out groups, right? And that's what happens with controversial stunts, like the Blair Witch Project advertising on Fox News. You get people that say, "Oh, I'm offended by this. This is wrong," and then you get people saying, "Oh, this is fun. I love it." And inherently, there becomes in-group, out-group dichotomies. And so, and that ranges from highly oppositional in-group, out-group thinking from like protests and elections to more unifying moments, where Barbenheimer was able to lift up both films. And I love the chicken sandwich wars call out that you had here.
Yeah, I mean, we're drawn to, most people are drawn to high contrast dichotomies in life, whether it's visual and perceptual, or dramatic in the stories that we're telling. Conflict is the precursor to change. Change is novel. We are attracted to novelty, and so a conflict that we often think about it in how the internet is rewiring our brains and rewiring our behaviors, but it's also we are social animals. And that social quality of our lives and how we derive meaning from our lives and from our relationships, it's what's in the films that we're making. But it's also in the marketing campaigns, and it's also obviously on social media. Looking at like oppositional tendencies, maybe there's on the far end of it, it's people being united by what they hate. And then on the other side, it's people who are wanting to bring people to be united by what they love. And, Kendrick Lamar and, what was the other guy's name? Drake.
Aubrey.
Like, that's rap battles, but like people who are dancing to the music and are benefiting from this like incredible rivalry that's like producing all this amazing music. Yeah. The call-outs
record sales.
In the center of it, obviously people are getting killed, whether it's Tupac or whomever. But as we go further into pop culture, I don't necessarily see the same form of like a struggle. And in fact, like with Barbenheimer, I just like to include Barbenheimer and stuff, but I'd say that that quote unquote rivalry between the two of these films probably increased Oppenheimer's box office by, let's say, $30 million. Rivalries are very, very lucrative ways to promote yourself, promote your brand. Even the guy who started Snapchat went up against Mark Zuckerberg as the opposite of, Snap being the opposite of Facebook.
I'm sure you've seen that in any sort of messaging framework for brands or clothes that you buy or anything. Oh, we're not the big guys. We're a small business just like you, and we want to fight against this industry problem, right? And that happens with independent cinema, and we're making interesting films and defying,
What was it that Dolly said? Find out who you are and do it with purpose. But you want to stand for something. What you stand for is as beautiful and important as what you stand against.
If you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. So.
That was a Dolly part.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's so just within these two have a relationship. Are you trying to take advantage of other people, or are you trying to bring them into an experience in your film that is going to be creating meaning and entertainment in their lives? And I'd say there's it distinguishes also in the intentions and how people are interacting with it. This is the zeitgeist and how the zeitgeist is changing. And or not changing, but just what's out there, and it hopefully provides a way for you to be able to think about it. You could go to Wikipedia and you can look at cognitive biases, and you'll find a whole other list of ways in which we have the human tendencies of attentional habits or social tendencies.
And I think what's really great too, and this leads well into how do you establish a community and how does it last? And I think the good news is with enough, with an important story that you're telling that's relevant and resonant with people and finding that right audience, they're going to take and run with that, and they're going to then project their own meaning onto it. So, I think with this example, can anyone recognize what film this is from? What was that? Everything Everywhere? Yeah, exactly. So you don't even need to even see her face to know the film. And, I think what they did exceptionally well is, the film hit on so many different elements, and it really fostered a conversation around generational trauma, but also just community art. I believe, a huge movement after the release was people creating their own posters, their own wardrobe, and the A24 was encouraging that and having people dress up, and it creates these cultural events that are very participatory, right? So encouraging your audience, and this can happen for documentaries of if it's about a topic that's relevant and important, like fostering conversations around it and having these screenings and conversations in community centers. And so you're kind of allowing your audiences to help contribute to your marketing and your messaging around the film, and sometimes move it in very strange and interesting ways.
I'm just going to add to that, we all have a strong tendency to belong with each other. And I find that at the root of whether it's an oppositional struggle or something that's more going into pop culture. We love to belong with each other.
It's culturally ingrained. It's in our DNA.
Yeah, it's just how we are.
And then, like how you love to share,
last slide?
Yeah, Barbenheimer. I love to share the queer icon, the Babadook, and I think this is a great way to kind of showcase that sometimes the audience projected meaning can really go in a totally different way with the wonderful weird world of the internet, right? So this film came out in 2014, and it was a couple years later that kind of through memes and through a little bit of trolling, but also then translated into a real identity of reclaiming and codifying the Babadook as a queer icon. So, I don't think that was the intention of Jennifer Kent when she made the Babadook, but, to this day, I think if you go and search the Babadook, this is what you're going to see surround it. So, really, your audience is going to take and run with what you put into the world, and, you can amplify that and play with that, and it, you likened it to playing jazz earlier, right? But maybe the audience will steal the sax from you.
With your audience.
And that also goes, if you guys are familiar with Pepe, the frog, there's a great documentary about this, that this was a peace-loving frog that a cartoonist had made obscurely, and then years later it became a symbol of the alt-right. So, things can move in very different directions.
Yeah, very strange ones. And I think that's it.
We'll keep it on this image because it's fun. Cool. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you. You can open up to questions.
Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes left for questions, if anybody has one. Yeah. Can I throw this? Careful.
Hi, I'm a high school student from Macau, and my question is, nowadays teenagers, which are our future audience, they are more willing to enjoy movies in streaming platforms than visiting movie theaters. Some may visit Netflix, but there are also people who visit illegal platforms for movies where they don't need to pay for it. And how can we change that and to attract the younger generations to visit theater? Or do you think streaming platforms is a better option for this generation?
Well, you have a film coming out that's very younger generation oriented, so.
I hope that younger generations discover, I think that our population of our world has grown by billions since I've been on it. And it's always going, and there's plenty of people in the world, and they are still going, there's still a significant enough amount of people that are going to movie theaters that even if they're it's not as proportionately as large as it was in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, that it's still, it's like article of faith for me, but I see them coming and I believe that they will come. And I think if we give them a reason to come to the movies, that they will.
Exactly that. Yeah, I agree. I think it's less about will they show up and are they being spoken to and messaged to in the right way. And something really exciting is happening in the States, in Los Angeles right now, which is there's a lot of these historic art house cinemas, and young people are really galvanized and helping keep them afloat. So I do think, you know, the distribution tactics are, there's so many more now, and I think, you know, for many films, maybe their path is just streaming, and I think you can still use these tactics to break through and reach a huge audience. I know quite a few people who've had, as I'm sure you do, Jay, like who have just done very independent small films and have them become #1 streamers on platforms just because they connected with audiences. But I do think it comes down to just how you craft your message and how do you appeal to someone, and they'll show up.
Theatrical, also, successful theatrical campaign just drives so much success on streamings. And so, you know, whether they're seeing it, I prefer to watch movies in a movie theater. I hope more people are watching movies in the movie theater, but I'm happy for them to watch the film. You know, well, I was going to launch into it, but I think a lot of people have had their most important moments with cinema at home on television, and especially when they were children. And so I think that's something that's okay. But we are obviously dedicating ourselves to people coming to movie theaters, and would love to give young people a reason to go.
And just to, like, the last thought there is because it provides that community, right? So,
yeah.
And I think
They
there's
find
more,
each other in person.
There's some fun stuff happening as well that didn't make it in the deck, but we were talking about some of these theaters that would create, so for example, there's a film called Magic Mike, and they brought, it's about male exotic dancers, and they brought these dancers to the cinema, and it was a sold-out screening. I think it was like $50 or $60 a ticket. So, you know, providing more community, innovative, fun, you know, opportunities like that, I think really helps drive people into theaters.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Stefan, and I wanted to say first, congrats, even though it's a while ago, on The Witch.
Thank you.
Because I really loved the movie and I was really impressed by it and kind of fascinated, and so thank you for doing this. And then I have maybe a bit naive question. It's about, like, if you're like a filmmaker or a writer-director, and you have like a story or like a synopsis, and you think the story is interesting, and maybe it's like a combination of genres like psychological drama and mystery thriller, of psychological drama and fantasy, maybe like a bit like Guillermo del Toro style, even though it's not the same.
Sure.
Or like even Robert Eggers in between or something. But you don't know many producers yet, or like maybe the right producer, or the best producer for the thing. And the question is, how would you approach producers? I don't know, it's like a stupid question, but...
No, it's a good question. I think, first of all, like, ignore this entire presentation, because you're writing, you're exploring, this should not be focused on marketing at this stage in the way that we're talking about it. You know, when I first started out as a producer, I was going to film festivals. I would have begged anybody to bring a feature film to me that I could try to get going. I think finding the right producer is someone who is listening to you and has a grasp of your intentions as a creator, and is providing and doing that in order to try to provide the right kind of support. It's hard to get films made under any circumstances by any producer, and you know, the right qualities and talent in a producer can be on display at very early stages of their career, or if you are wanting to access a more established producer, just understand that they're probably scrambling to stay alive and may have a lot of maybe doing marketing and film and whatever, like I am. Like it's a tough business, but producers are, and as producers go along, they're usually needing to keep on balance, like multiple films at once, obviously. I mean, so figuring out how does your project fit into their business and into their schedule. If you're looking, but break ground on your film, make the movie. That's what we did on The Witch. No, that film was passed on by every single person that we showed it to. The same person who wrote the report, actually, Carrie Putnam, read the script and singled it out and brought it into the Sundance Catalyst Lab, and that's where we started to get attention for the film. We could not get that film made to save our lives. It was written in Old English, and at that time, anybody who thought about a witch thought about Wizard of Oz, and especially in the U.S. And the killing of a baby in the first scene, I mean, forget it. Like, nobody was down with that shit. And actually, it's not true. There were some champions.
The sickos.
Guys at K5, and yeah, we had some early champions of it, but it barely survived production because we didn't have enough financing to get it made. So yeah, it's sheer effort and mutual trust and support, and finding someone and a producer who will provide that to you, I think those are the key core important aspects of that search. And also, you're making the same movie, and you're going to be going through some really hard times together. Every film's tough. Every fucking movie's hard. Like, they're all hard. It's hard work. Don't make it harder on each other, you know?
Thank you. And we have one final question.
Okay, hi. Sorry, I'm really nervous because I write the thesis based also on your work, so yeah, it's a great pleasure. But I have a question about...
Wow.
Yeah, because also about The Witch and the Lighthouse, and not only...
Sure.
So I have questions about A24. Okay, so we have one company, and they are doing also so Lighthouse, and the other side you have, for example, Marshall, with the shoes on. So now I know there is a lot of people, also me. So when I see the sign that's A24, so I'm going for that movie. I don't care about the genre and all this stuff. I just go for that. So how you make one company that they make different films and you're still going for that, and they have a huge based fan. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It ties into what we're discussing a little bit here. I mean, A24, first of all, they're great. The people who are running the company, they set out with a very clear sense of purpose for what A24 was doing. They have exceptional curatorial taste in the films that they're working on. They know how to bring those films to market. And they set out to do it through digital marketing. They've built a brand because early on they had immense, like what we would call in marketing, like share of voice. Because there just weren't that many other, there was nobody else marketing films on Facebook and elsewhere. They might have been a little bit, but they weren't doing it the way A24 was doing. And so A24 became an indelible association with the films that they were putting out. And they delivered on really great films and experiences for audiences, and they deserve the success that they have. So that's more in the zone of brand building, but that core purpose and understanding of what your brand is and positioning that alongside of your work, I think, is especially important. Very rarely, it's hard for a producer to do that as much as it is for a director, and also for a distribution company that's out in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a terrific example of, exactly all the things we were talking about here, and you encapsulated it so well with, hey, regardless what the film is or what the genre is, if it has the A24, card on it, I'm going to go see it, and they really did that through their community building. They also did some amazing stuff in terms of creating fanship and membership and having these merchandise tie-ins so that, it's providing this massive social proof. So if you're wearing an A24 hoodie for Marcel Deschelles and someone else has an A24 keychain, right? You guys have a mutual connection and bonding, and so I think it really just ties into, really specific, making very specific films that are intentional and distinct and growing community around that.
And there's room for more. There's Mubi happening. I mean, obviously, and Neon out of the U.S., and there's great companies across, the world that are doing great work.
Okay, and I think that's all we have time for. So can we have one more round of applause, please, for Jay and Adam?
Thank you.
Thanks so much.